What's up, guys? You've probably read the title of the video. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about how to prepare for the edXL IAL English language exam. Now, when I did the exam, there weren't a lot of resources available. It was pretty, vague in terms of the examiner feedback as well, not too specific. And, you're getting a 20 or 25 mark question. You feel like there should be some, specific instructions or like a particular structure that you can be given to sort of work your way around. But, there was none of that. I think it was probably due to the fact that, it was a very new exam board. Schools were, very new to adopting it. And so they didn't exactly know how we could, I guess, provide particular resources for them. Again, because it was a new exam board, or at least for my school. But yeah, alhamdulillah, I did pretty well in that. I've got an A in the exam with with unit 2 and unit 4 being my top performers, where I've got 100 UMS points. 100 UMS points, for those who don't know, is essentially like you've gotten the highest possible grade you can get within those two units. So yeah, I mean, you've probably clicked on the video also because that you're facing a similar issue. There's probably not a lot of content out there for this exam board, and you're probably facing the same or similar issue that I have been facing, which is to do with lack of information, or lack of information that is relevant to the exam board. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking to today. I'm going to give you a little outline of how I sort of started looking at these different units and how to tackle these exam units, these different exam units. So yeah, we're just going to be going through that. So let's go. Okay, everyone. So the iPad is currently being balanced on a chair. But anyway, so let's get on with it. The first unit, unit 1, to do with your context and identity. Now, over here, the examiners are essentially just looking for, your ability to make comparisons between the texts that they've given. They're looking at your analysis and evaluation to some degree, of the different language being used by different characters within the two pieces of text that you are being given. Now, what is very important over here is that you are being introduced into the whole A-level sort of course. And so what's very important over here is your use of technical language, right? What I mean by this is, you might have now been taught about, the different language frameworks. So, your graphology, pragmatics, things like, grammar, syntax, and lexis, and all of that. And so all of these different, language frameworks have particular key terms underneath them. And what you're doing here is starting to use those technical terms. That's what the examiners want to see. And, that is what they're grading you based on as well. The other thing is the comparisons that you make. Now, try not to, dive deep into one key term or one key comparison or, even one key analysis. You want to cover, a variety of these things to a good level of depth. So what I mean by that is, if you look at your, normal structure for a paragraph, if you go, point, evidence, and then explain, like that's pretty much it. And then you can maybe put some sort of an alternative to it as well. So, when you make that point, you give your evidence and you explain that, you can perhaps, if you want to go into slightly more depth, give an alternate, meaning or explanation to that point that you've used. But, you shouldn't go much beyond this, because at that point you've got limited time in the exam and you can only focus your time, so much on, one particular term or point that you need to make. So, Unit 1, once again, quick summary is that you need to start looking into your technical language, your analysis, comparisons, theories are important, but they are not as important at the moment. You can use them. They are a, sort of a bump in your grade, which is what I found, but it is not extremely important at the moment. And yeah, so you just want to cover, as much variety of key terms across those language frameworks as possible. Now, moving on to Unit 2. So Unit 2 is to do a lot with, the evolution of English language, right? So from a lingua franca to, now being used as a global language. It is also looking at the different dialects of English. And so what is really important over here is to look at a technical language. So that's super important over here, but in a slightly different manner. Wow, very nice spelling. All right, technical language, sorry. What you're looking at over here is more so technical language in terms of your phonology. Phonology, so like rhoticity. Wow, that was a very good spelling of phonology. Oh my god, I have no idea how I went through my English exam. Phonology. I am not the best with spellings, guys. Anyways, so you're looking at technical language more so to do in terms of your phonology, like your fricatives, dental, whatever, I forgot them at this point, your velar phonemes and things like that, and trying to make comparisons. So obviously in question 1, you're looking at, phonology, you're looking at all of these technical sort of differences between standard and non-standard English. So non-standard, for some of the people, we would probably just say that this is incorrect English, but obviously you don't want to use that word because incorrect, has certain connotations, which means that it is somewhat of a lower language, but there's no such thing as that. So rather use non-standard. And I was actually reading through some of the mark schemes, the examiner comments, and students that had put down incorrect English or wrong English. The examiners were very strict on that. They were like, we need to make sure that these students understand that there's no bias attached to it, because the moment you say wrong, meaning that you devalue one dialect over the other. So yeah. So that's entirely to do with standard and non-standard English, and you're comparing that at a phonological level, at a grammatical level, at a syntactical level, and those across those different language frameworks. Over here as well, it's super important that you don't dive, very deeply into just one particular point and in one particular language framework. You want to cover as many language frameworks as possible, with as many key terms, as many key points, as much variety as possible. And, once again, refer back to this point over here. Don't go into super depth. Like the max you want to go is maybe provide an alternative explanation to the point that you've already made. Now let's look at the second part. And also, by the way, over here you can now start using theories. They start to become more important, core aspect of your exam, in these areas. When it comes to the second part, or the second question of your Unit 2 exam, you want to put in information in regards to the key concepts like Couture's 3 circles, things like the damp spoon syndrome, Aitken's theories, things like that, language theories, also things like descriptivists, prescriptivists, all those sorts of ideologies to do with language and dialects. That's what you want to put a lot in part 2 of your Unit 2 exam. And it is something that has helped me a lot with that. And so things that you want to include here, again, are to do a lot with, providing these theories and concepts in relation to English as a global language. Over here, this is a very theoretical discussion, almost with yourself, because in the other parts you have a text that you can analyze, which is super like rigorous. In this area, you're more of relying on your ability to discuss things, to dive deep and sort of have an argument with yourself. So things important over here are issues, concepts, and theories related to language change. And once again, over here, you've been given, 3 different criteria in the, exam question. And so you just want to cover all 3 of those points. But once again, don't dive super deep into one point that you don't have time for the other 2. Make sure that you cover all 3. And if you have time, then you can dive deeper into each one of them. Okay, now done with unit 1, 2. This is our AS level. Let's now move to A2, the big boys game, 2 level. So, unit 3. All right, so this is where stuff really starts to take a turn, right? When I did my unit 1, I think I got about 85 UMS points. Unit 2 was 100 UMS points. So I was feeling, pretty good. And so when I completed my unit 3 exam, I was like, this is going to be crazy. It's going to be, another one, it's just going to be a banger exam, with a great result. I don't even need to worry about it. But what was very surprising was when I got the results back, I actually got a D for unit 3. And that actually kind of, for a bit, like for a week or 2, I was planning on, purely just like quitting English, because I was like, this is really bad. How did I just get, an A over here, an A over here, or a high A over here, and just straight D? But, when you move into the A2 level, they start, there's like more expectations from you. There's different things that you have to now start looking at. And so when I did the retest, alhamdulillah, that came back way, way better. So with unit 3, what are you actually looking at? Now, if you look at part 1 of unit 3, it's a lot to do with you sort of, reading text and then crafting a third piece off of your own from it. Now, I'm just basically quoting the exam here. So what do I even mean by that? What I essentially mean is that they are judging your ability to almost like synchronize these 3 texts or 3 or maybe even 2 texts sometimes that are given to you, and the ability to make a third text with a new, genre, audience, purpose and meaning. And what you need to be very careful over here is they are looking at your ability to adapt or create that text based on perspective of a very particular persona. So a persona is super important over here. That's the whole reason why they've given you that genre, audience, purpose, and meaning context to consider, because that is what is going to inform the kind of persona that you have. So for example, one of the exams, they were about the Titanic, right? I think one of them was a newspaper report, the other was a statement by one of the individuals involved in the Titanic, and so on. And if you were to think about it, you could take a persona, for example, from the perspective of a Coast Guard, or from the perspective of one of the peoples that were in the Titanic, and you can also go as far as taking the perspective from one of the crew members. And that is going to completely change the kind of language you use, how you talk about certain things. I mean, because as a crew member, you will have information that the average person won't, right? And so that's the whole idea about unit 3, is trying to create a text that almost looks like this person would have conveyed this information in this particular way, and getting as close to that as possible. I hope that's that's making sense. And that is what you're really thinking about, is the persona and the perspective that you are going to adopt, and make that text, or the new text that you're going to make based off of, right? And that's going to even affect the kind of information that you put into it, how you put it into it, and a slew of other things. Okay, so why did I put part 3? Yeah, so that is what you're looking at in your part 1, right? Now, Also, as you're making your part one, take a note or just a mental note of what kind of strategies you're putting into it, or what kind of frameworks you are using within the text that you're making, because that is going to inform the second part of the Unit 3 exam, and that is to do with your commentary, right? And commentary. Now, something that helped me during the exam was that every time I commented about one of the features within my text, I would relate it back to GCARP, right? So for example, if I had used a particular positive lexis, I would explain that in reference to my genre, context, audience, response, and purpose, right? And I don't have to hit all 5 of them at once. I can just hit like maybe 2 or 3, because again, a particular feature that I use, like lexis, for a positive field lexis, or a euphemism or a dysphemism, that would only be something suitable to explain why I did it for a particular audience and the response that I wanted to get off of them. And so, this is like sort of interchangeable, but what I essentially mean is, like, every time you comment or you make a point about one of the features you've used in part 1, you have to link it back to why you did that for the particular genre, context, audience, the kind of response you wanted from them, and the purpose of that text. You have to explain why you made that particular choice, not just what the choice was, right? And again, with this commentary, they have given you sort of 3, I think, bullet points that you need to talk about in your response, and try and incorporate that as much. Again, the super important thing over here, as I talked with Unit 2 and 1, is that you need to include that information in a greater amount of variety. So if you pick on one particular feature you've used in your response, and then you go into extreme depth with that, you've not exactly covered the other things that the examiner needs to see. And if you go into extreme depth with one point, you lose time and information about the other changes that you've made to the text, to explain to the examiner, here's what I've done, this is what's super clever, this is what I think someone this is what I think the persona that I've adapted would actually say, would actually use. So yeah, again, you're trying to show off all the features that you've used here, and then explain to the examiner why you've done that in relevance to your contextual features. Okay. Theories, yes, you can use theories over here. They are relatively, I guess, important. I did not use a lot of theories, but in the places that I did use theories, the examiners actually encouraged it, because at the end of the day, you're also trying to sort of explain or do like educated guesses in terms of what that persona would do, right? Like if you look at certain gender theories, perhaps because of particular gender theories, a persona that I've chosen hypothetically of a female would say a particular thing than what a male would say. Again, that is going off of a very sort of educated guess, if that makes sense. And so yes, theories are pretty good to use over here, but they are something supplementary. If you've not got time, then I wouldn't recommend that you go into the theories, because again, you're mainly looking at your commentary on the text you've made in part 1. Theories are something, again, supplementary. Try and include them, but don't force them where they can't be put. Okay, with that, let's move on to our last unit, Unit 4. Now, this is probably one of my best units, because again, Unit 2 was 100 UMS, Unit 4 was 100 UMS as well, and I really thought I would mess this one up because I messed the one before it, but it was not that bad at all. And as a matter of fact, it was very nice to be doing this unit. So within this unit, for those that are not familiar, I think the school sort of picks a particular, or at least that's what happened in our case, was the school picked one of the areas of language, English language, to look at. So we did language and power. I am sure that there's others. There's ones like the child's language. Then there's like a few others. And so a school will, usually pick that. And then once it comes into your exam, you will have questions only relevant. You will have to answer questions only relevant to the area or the English language that you guys have picked, right? So when we chose language and power, our topic of research was debates, okay? And I'd say this is actually a pretty good topic to get, was debates. And so we had to research, and by the way, when you're given the pre-release, which includes information on the debates, you're given information on how to conduct your research with particular articles, books, and so you're not just left astray to do your own research with no information given to you. So we were given a lot of resources to look at, but again, you also have to do things outside of this, because at the end of the day, the research that they've mentioned within that sheet of paper is very limited, right? And if you want a super overall understanding, a better understanding of your research topic, then you're gonna have to go the extra mile. You're gonna have to maybe even watch movies, I guess, watch movies, videos, or listen to podcasts in that sort of research area, and that helps a lot when it comes to the exam, because you're going to be asked certain things that might not always appear from the information that the pre-release has given you, right? It has to come from something that's almost natural. When it comes into part 1 of the Unit 4 exam, you're going to have to use do some language analysis. But here's the interesting bit, right? It's the same language frameworks that you would use, either in Unit 1 or Unit 2 or even Unit 3. But this time, you are going to be using special key terms and terminology that is only or especially, made or relevant to the research topic that you've been given. So, for example, within debates, there's certain terminology in if you look at the Aristotelian rhetoric, things like logos, ethos, and pathos, right? That's a lot to do with the pragmatic language framework. So we would use something like that when analyzing a text for Unit 4, because that is because we're again analyzing it based off of a language framework, but points specifically relevant to the research that we have conducted. Now, again, over here, I would also recommend, start using some particular theories, concepts, or issues that you have already researched. So every time you make a note on ethos being used, you can explain how it's being used, point, evidence, explain, but also go a step further to maybe give an example of something that you found in your research. Okay. And now let's move on to the part 2 of our Unit 4 exam. Now, essentially, this part is where you just have to show off all of your research, every single thing that you know about the particular topic that's been given to you. When I say every single thing, I mean every single thing, right? So things like theories, key terms, concepts, even examples from real life where particular things might have been used, and you just want to put down all of them into your Unit 4 exam. Now, another thing to consider with this is whenever you're given the question, it's going to be a super open-ended question, and so the way you answer it entirely matters up to you. So what I actually did was, and I would recommend that you also do this, is before you start writing, just think about what sort of things you want to consider within your answer. Also, create a very short paragraph right after the question, explaining how you understood the question and how you're planning to answer it and what you're planning to include in your answer, right? So it's just a short statement, perhaps it explains if so let's take an example. Maybe it's talking about debates, so it's saying how can power be used in debates. And so I'll say something like power can be implemented in debates through the use of particular language frameworks, language frameworks, things, what else, language frameworks, contextual features, and things like that. So I'll make probably like 3 main points, and then what I'll do is I will and the rest of my essentially answer is a discussion from those 3 points. So you're showing off your knowledge over here of knowledge. Then what you're doing is you are implementing a strategy. So strategy for your answer. Strategy for your answer. Then what else you're doing over here is actually trying to sort of what's it called? Ooh, let me think. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, almost have like an argument or a discussion with yourself, right? So argument / discussion. So every time you make a point, wow, that is a very good spelling for discussion. Oh my god, I can't think and write at the same time. Sorry. Oh shoot, you guys couldn't see that. Sorry, my bad. Anyways, so yeah, you're having an argument and a discussion with yourself. You're trying to show off all that you know about this particular topic, and trying to develop a short strategy for how you're going to build up your answer. And that's pretty much it, right? That's how you tackle it. So you're gonna have to include all of these things and go off of this. And again, with unit 4 as well, question 1 and 2 both, try and cover your answer in as much variety as possible, because the last thing you want is focusing on one single point that just covers one area of the mark scheme and not a lot of these aspects. And that can create a problem because the examiner does not know if you understood other aspects of this exam. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. I've also, given you guys my email, so you can contact me through that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, good luck with your exam and see you soon.